Okay, hi everyone, welcome. I'm Alan Rippin. I'm the Center for Active Living Director at Athens Community Council on Aging, and we're so happy to have some wonderful guests today, members of the Chautaugua Society, and I hope I have pronounced that correctly. You're here to tell us a little bit more about your organization and the wonderful things you're doing to bring history alive through theater and performance and storytelling, and all the great things you all are doing and the events coming up later this fall. So I'm just going to go ahead and pass it over to you. I think, Peter, did you want to get started first, or Madeline? You tell me.
Well, I'm Peter Balsamo. I'm the president of the Athens Chautauqua Society. We're a new nonprofit organization here in Athens, and we started a little less than 2 years ago. We're now officially a 501c3, and the focus is that we are promoting humanities-based education in the greater Athens area. And we started in partnership with the Greenville Chautauqua that has been operating for more than 20 years. And the focus that they have, as we pretty much have, is the use of historical interpretation. Basically, we have very gifted, very talented Chautauqua scholars who present a particular character, such as Mark Twain or Rosa Parks, Ben Franklin, Winston Churchill, and it goes on and on and on. And basically, this is a way to educate the audience about history. Basically, these are individuals that are taking on a certain point in time of that person's life and talking about it. And then the audience is able to interact with the performer and ask the performer questions and really learn a lot in dialogue with that person, learn about history. So we were scheduled to have Ben Franklin and Rosa Parks at the Morton Theater back in June of 2020. And of course, everybody knows what happened during that time. And we have rescheduled that event for the Morton Theater for June of 2022. So 2 years past the original date. And then we have an event coming up in October and one in April of next year that Art's going to go in a little more detail about. Very excited about the two performers that we're bringing in. One is Bruce Collier in October and Leslie Goddard in April, who's going to be doing Eleanor Roosevelt and Jackie Kennedy. And Bruce Collier is going to do the Yalta Conference, which is basically going to perform Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt, and then do a second performance on Winston Churchill. Art will give you more specific details about that. So we're real excited about these events. And this October will be our charter program. We're real excited to make sure that's going to be a success. And we shall see what happens. So I'm going to pass it over to Madeline, who I think is going to share the screen and to show this fantastic film that she produced that explains in detail what is the Chautauqua movement, the Chautauqua Institution in upstate New York, that we're sort of we spun out of. And basically then we'll answer some questions. So Madeline, I'll pass it on to you and take it from there.
Thank you, Peter. And let me, please, Alan, yes.
Sorry, no, thank you, Peter. Just want to make sure while we're watching, if everyone can make sure their button's muted, just so we don't get any background noise. So, sorry to interject, but thanks.
No worry. And Alan, you did valiantly in trying to pronounce Chautauqua. And if everyone is paying attention at the first few seconds of the video, there'll be a little primer on the subject, but it's like, shh, talk, what? Chautauqua, Chautauqua. Anyway, I have to say, Alan et al., and those of you in the Harris room, this is such a sentimental journey because for a number of years, I've been in and out of your sacred place. And in fact, I've taught some workshops in the very room where we all are currently. I don't know, I can't see a show of hands necessarily of the dozen of you that are there, but has anybody ever been associated with or, brushed shoulders with the Chautauquas? There are 100 and something of them around the country with a mothership on Lake Chautauqua Western New York. A show of hands, has anybody had any association? Art, absolutely, and certainly Peter, but anybody at ACCA? Awesome, Billy. And Paula, that's terrific. And if we have a moment at the end, I'd love to, have you share with us what your reflections on that are. But without further ado, from the point of view of just bringing everybody current, essentially what you're going to see is probably 20 something minutes of a video that we put together. The University of Georgia has within their school of education or college of education, the Torrance Center. And Dr. Torrance was the father of gifted education. And the current director, originally from London, asked a number of nonprofits and entrepreneurs and innovators to put together a 30-minute video during the pandemic era to be zoomed over a 2 or 3 day period of who we are. So basically, you're going to see the building blocks of that. So let's just go ahead and roll that film. And then when we come back, we can talk about your experiences with Chautauqua, and Art is going to share with you what's coming up now and into the future for your local pleasure. So let me, and help me here, Alan and/or Kelly. I will, if I'm the host, I don't know, are you able to see my screen?
Not yet. So did you click share screen at the bottom?
Let me stop that for a second and share that screen. Very good point. Okay, so do I hit the blue?
There you go.
Okay, now you can see it. Okay, wonderful.
Excellent.
All right, so this is our website in the works. And let me just see if I can get, all right. I will minimize me here. And here we go. Pay attention, because this is where you get your language lesson today. Enjoy. Okay, pucker your lips. Chautauqua. Chautauqua. We have our Native American forebears to credit for why so many places across this great country of ours are called what they are. And in the case of Chautauqua, we can thank the Iroquois, an indigenous confederacy of tribes known as the people of the Longhouse, who spoke of the lake in upstate New York that they were compelled to explore as if they were two moccasins bound together. And it would be that very same place that in 1874, two gentlemen, John Vincent and Lewis Miller, envisioned a summer campsite for Methodist Sunday school teachers, giving lasting voice to the Chautauqua movement, now nearly 150 years old. It was an idea that historically swept the nation, founded a mothership, the Chautauqua Institute in Western New York, and presses forward today in its rebirth. Theodore Roosevelt, one of our most prized of presidents, hailed it as the most American thing in America. The Chautauqua movement reflected a nationwide interest in the professionalization of teaching. Vincent and Miller were very clear that their intent was educational rather than revivalist. Podiums was on their mind, not pulpits. Lifelong learning was the vision, and they had 4 pillars to prove it: culturally, intellectually, spiritually, and recreationally. Among other things, the gentlemen, in their efforts to set a permanent anchor on the shores of Lake Chautauqua, also conceived of designing a correspondence course to bring a college opportunity to working and middle-class people who would otherwise be denied one. So it was in the late 1800s that the founder's dream became so popular It spread across the country like wildfire. And by 1900, independent assemblies, permanent fixtures with buildings and staff, just like the Institute on the Lake, began to pepper the landscape, particularly in the Midwest. In fact, the name itself, Chautauqua, became shorthand for organized gatherings meant to introduce people to the great thinkers, new ideas, and issues of public concern. As well, tent Chautauquas, veritable traveling shows, naturally evolved as this idea, whose time had come, gained very serious traction and became the principal expression of the movement. The breadth of their programming varied from Ivy League lecturers and Shakespearean actors to animal acts and vaudeville farce. And at their height, some 12,000 communities had hosted a Chautauqua of their own. And our very own Athens, Georgia, was no exception. Eclipsed by the wheels of time, both movements found themselves sidelined in the 1930s. Historians cite a serious wave of evangelism that the Chautauquans' meeting formats could not satisfy, plus the birth and the ascendancy of the car and its culture, radio, the talkies. And then there was the death knell, the Great Depression. However, the good news is that even though the Chautauqua Institute and those independent assemblies suffered some undeniably hard times, they, like the tent Chautauquans, are all experiencing a renaissance. And one shining example of that is right down the road in Greenville, South Carolina. Her very own Chautauqua, History Comes Alive. Truly an idea whose time has come again. So it was in 1965 that our United States Congress established the National Endowment for the Humanities, partnering with a number of state humanities councils, ignited the public's affection for arts and culture in that public square. And it would set the stage for that town's brilliant revival of her very own version of the tent Chautauquas. It's called Greenville Chautauqua's History Comes Alive. And everyone is in, from the chambers of commerce to the humanities councils, to downtown authorities, to public libraries. Every summer for 2 weeks, they have a festival where they host 40 first-rate historical reenactments. It's like watching a veritable big top unfold on multiple greens before the people's eyes for the last 20 years. Word spread about this phenomenon so fast that the Greenville Chautauqua realized they needed to generously partner with metropolises of like minds. Enter Spartanburg, South Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina, Brevard, North Carolina. And now, since we here in Athens have founded our very own Chautauqua in 2019, we've been added to that tri-star roster and proudly can claim to be the only site in Georgia on the circuit. Our collaborative with Greenville adds our very own acclaimed historical interpreters, just as others across the country have brought great speakers of the day, where people can gather together face to face to learn, to exchange ideas, to create community, and oh yes, have fun. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, Athens Chautauqua, like the whole world, has gone virtual. And so since the fall of 2020, we have successfully launched a series of Zoom presentations, like Sonny Kelly, like Bruce Collier. The spirit of Chautauqua is more than any one performance. It's a chance to be part of history come alive for all of us. A chance to debate the Constitution with our forefathers. To laugh out loud with Mark Twain. Get ourselves arrested with Rosa Parks. The Athens Chautauqua Society wants to thank the University of Georgia's Torrance Center's Festival of Ideas, and in particular, Dr. Anna Abraham, for inviting us to be part of your festival this weekend as we celebrate our rebirth of a century-old start. So with our remaining time, we'd like to take you to the movies. 3, in fact. The first is a video clip of several members of the Athens Chautauqua Society Board.
I didn't know anything about Chautauqua till maybe 2 years ago. I just arrived in Georgia. When I found out about it, it was almost like a dream, a combination of history and performing, because I've been in acting for a long time and I just love to do it.
I visited Chautauqua about 7 times during that period of 70s to the late 1990s, and just loved every minute of it. It's a phenomenal place. It's hard to describe. Everybody, I think, would love to experience Chautauqua. And of course, during that process of visiting the Chautauqua Institution, learned about the Chautauqua movement and the Chautauqua Trail and all the wonderful things that are happening around the country. So it means a lot to me, and I've really enjoyed my exposure and my learning about the Chautauqua movement.
And I just thought it sounded wonderful. One of the things that's very important to me is preserving history for the future, for our children. I think that's extremely important.
And we went 1 week out of the 9 weeks. Can you imagine having 9 weeks? And we got 1 week. We just could not believe what they had going on in those 4 pillars, whether it's even recreation and theater and opera and lectures. This is what's so unbelievable about it. No matter what genre of literature or art or performance, they have something for everybody there.
To the Chautauqua movement, I heard about it when we lived in New York. Many of our friends went up every summer. And when we came to Athens, I was fortunate enough to know Harvey Biskin and knew that he went every summer. And when I would drive him to various meetings, he would tell me about the experiences. It was the one thing that he really enjoyed. And so I had an interest in it.
Chautauqua appeals to all generations, from older adults to younger adults to children. It's a great thing for families to do together. And the thing that really convinced me of that was I went to a performance where a reenactor portrayed President Teddy Roosevelt. And after he did his act on stage, they started passing a microphone around the audience to let people ask questions. Well, a young boy stood up and addressed the president and said, "When you were in the White House, did you have any pets?" And Teddy boomed back, "That's an excellent question." And he knew so much about Teddy Roosevelt, he launched into this story about how his 2 sons sneaked their pony into the White House, up the stairs, into the bedroom of their sick brother. And he Teddy concluded with, "And Edith didn't like that at all." So,
The second movie is a conversation with a group of actors who portray historic figures professionally, Chautauqua style. They make the past come alive on stage through solo interpretations. Such exercises are far more than mere performances because they choose a person from our collective past. They research that subject matter and they dramatize the character's life. 2 Q&As follow the presentation, one where the actor is in character and one where he or she serves as a budding expert on the character's backstory. Again, the key is audience participation. We, the Athens Chautauqua Society, want the youth of our community to have a chance to try their hand at it too. And we're tentatively calling it the Youth Performance Academy. More on that later.
You know, it's funny. I believe as an artist, and Bruce, you can probably relate to this as well. Poetry, performance, they flow through us, even in our study of history, because people like Winston Churchill, for example, were so artful in their oratory, in their thought. It's a form of poetry, right? Even in his diplomacy and his statesmanship. And I found the same thing as I perform the work of people like James Baldwin or W.E.B. Du Bois. And what I found is, I think about Billie Holiday's song, "All of Me." Why not take all of me, right? I don't know that she wrote it, but she made that song famous, right? And I think that we as Americans, we have to come to a place, especially as we're training up young performers and thinkers and civic engagers, that we're not representing a perfect humanity or a perfect country. We're representing a beautiful humanity and a beautiful, amazing country with a wonderful ideal laid out in the Declaration of Independence. And we oftentimes don't quite meet the mark, but the fact that we're aspiring toward it makes us Americans. And the fact that we do believe in liberty and justice for all, I think makes us better humans. And so I think that performance and connecting civic engagement with performance and working with youth allows us to help them to tap into their humanity and to learn to love themselves for who they are and what they are, and learn to love their country and their country people for who they are and what they are. And then and only then, I think, can we come to a place where we can come to the public sphere and be quote unquote civil.
In developing a character, you see the complexities of your character. And that's one of the things that we as adult Chautauquans learn as we're creating our portrayal. But that's such a value for young people to understand too. You know, Abraham Lincoln was a flawed man, and they can't necessarily convey that in a school lesson, but a Chautauquan can convey it, and a young person who's doing a portrayal of Abraham Lincoln is bound to make those kinds of discoveries.
When we disperse those illusions and we say even the quote unquote greatest people in history cried themselves to sleep, had moments of regret, didn't know which way to go, made mistakes, almost didn't see it through or didn't see it through places in their life, I think that inspires a great deal of hope. Because our job is to show who they were at that time in the evolution of the world. So it becomes good news, bad news. And that's another part of Chautauqua that I'm very interested and keen on. Where have we gone? How far have we come? Let's celebrate that. But then we have to pause and go, why does this sound so familiar to us? Why is this creeping up? Why haven't we learned these lessons? And how can we watch these people's mistakes? That to me is the primary value of Chautauqua right now, where we're at.
The third movie is a conversation with a group of people interested in making a more perfect union with us. Right here at home and Chautauqua style again. Our board shares a very strong conviction, and that is that our country deserves a closer look at how democracies fulfill their promise. Where do we find the truth of the matter, the facts in the case? What are the forces that threaten our understanding of or broad-mindedness around an issue? And why is the instinct for mutual respect lost to anger and disconnect sometimes? And most of all, how do we fix it? So we, again, the Athens Chautauqua Society, want the youth of our community to be fully engaged in the world they're inheriting from us. And we're tentatively calling that the Public Square Academy.
And so when I work with social studies teachers to be and make this pitch, it seems like a more difficult pitch in 2021 than it was in 2008 or 1997 when I started this. So I'm excited about the experiential aspect of, issues aside, the issues do matter. But what I want my students to experience is helping the facilitation of 14, 15, 16, 17-year-olds see what it's like just to engage in a kind of conversation that they may not have ever participated in before, which is, a civil dialogue around an important issue of mutual interest. And so I'm not, haven't done the National Issues Forum protocol yet as kind of a model for making discussion happen. I've been on the website, and I believe I'm scheduled, Margaret, to participate in my very first National Issues Forum on the 15th with you. Okay, so I will have experienced that. But from what I read on the website about how the preparation works, the curriculum works to prepare students, and I actually am keenly interested in how it actually plays out for that hour when we actually have the conversation. If it goes according to its description on the website, this seems like custom fit for my students to see a model of how you bring civil dialogue and discourse into your future classroom, and a sense of, 14, 15, 16-year-olds are capable of talking and being together in ways that, only schools are our last bastion of democracy. I agree with Oglesby. I don't know, Mark, but I would agree with him. So I'm just mostly into the experiential component. I want my students to walk out of the academy feeling like, wow, students are capable. And this could be part of what I do as a civic educator.
I am the president for the nation's Center for Civic Education, which works both around both the country and the world to work within the civic education and then the constitutional education space. And so I've actually been really interested and excited to see some of the work that folks are talking about here, because there's really no question in my mind that we're at a time in our history where a civic and constitutional education is really core, no matter what age you are. And unlike so many other different subjects that I celebrate, like math and science, and I certainly do, but civics is the only subject that is actually in every classroom. It's actually in every workspace. It's everywhere. And I think that's something that is really important to celebrate. And I think it's something that's really important to be cognizant of. So the idea that everybody is kind of forming around of coming together and making sure that a civic and constitutional education is available for even more people, I think is extraordinary and is something that when I look around the country and I get to see the great work that's happening, I'm currently actually in California. I'm usually up in New York, and I get to see everything in between. It's really wonderful to have a chance to see what everybody's trying to put together. And I have to, obviously give a great shout out to Peter for bringing me in and looking at this from the 50+ year history that my organization has, and ensuring that this information in a nonpartisan fashion is available to give people the tools so that they can have an understanding and be able to have complex conversation about some of the big issues that we are facing as a society. So to hear exactly what Todd just talked about, to think about this in a really broad sense, because we are the idea of having both students that are going to be engaged, but of course, students of different ages that can then serve as mentors and look at their own learning journey. There's nothing like a civic and constitutional education. And it's one of the reasons why it's very exciting to have a chance as the center to be a piece of this puzzle and to share in this work that everybody's looking forward to getting started.
Again, I cannot thank you all enough at the University of Georgia, in particular the Torrance Center, and most especially Dr. Anna Abraham. Welcome to Dogtown for our participation in your inaugural Festival of Ideas. What a great idea. Indeed.
Anyway, welcome back, everyone. Naveen, welcome to you, my friend. And I don't know if yes, thank you. Can you all, I guess we may have lost Billy. I hate that. But regardless, and I know Paula, you had said, Paula, if you want to unmute yourself, I know you had said, honey, that you were familiar with Chautauqua. Naveen, I know, wants to be familiar with Chautauqua. Anyway, any thoughts or reflections, questions that we can entertain from the floor are most welcome.
I'm familiar with Chautauqua because I took an OLLI course. Can you hear me?
Yes.
An OLLI course about Chautauqua about 5 years ago or so. And my sister and her husband have stayed up there, gone up there. So that's how I'm in contact. It's a great place.
Yeah, it is a great place. Any others? I know we've lost Billy, but anybody in the Harris room? We are more than happy to, again, speak endlessly on this subject, but we need to take your lead on any interest or questions that you have before Art speaks to you about what lies ahead.
Well, I love this and I cannot wait to see it in person. I'm very excited. And it reminds me, just thinking about this sort of experiential aspect, I was thinking it reminded me of the Van Gogh show that's happening, that kind of you immerse yourself into the art. And this reminds me of that, of it's three-dimensional, it's brought to life, it's an embodied experience. And it feels like that's really an interesting way that, especially for kids too, to really, even as a kid, when I remember growing up, I remember the exhibits that I remember most are the ones you crawl under or go in, or, it's sort of a physical experience. So I think this seems similar in that sense of pop-up book, but, a lot of people. So, very exciting. So thank you. We're thrilled to go further with this.
Well, we certainly look very forward to having you, Alan, with us mid-October, as well as everybody in the Harris room and everybody on this call. As we were preparing for the making of the video, I ended up having the extraordinary privilege of speaking with a dozen reenactors from across the country. This is just, excerpts, tips of the iceberg. And they come from all walks of life. They're attorneys, they're professors, they're factory workers, but they're people who want to immerse themselves in the library and study a character of interest to them, write a script, design and build a set, and perform. And to be a Chautauqua performer asks, again, that at the end, the Q&A, the question and answer, the relationship between the audience and the solo performer is huge. As Terry, one of our board members, said, Mr. President, do you have any pets? And because there's been so much deep work done in understanding, you're an amateur expert on that person. You can be very extemporaneous and then, so you're wearing the in character hat, and then you're taking that off and answering the question from the archival point of view. The one thing that I will say, Alan, the performers, they started out as, writers or any of a number of things. And they were, this one in particular, it was her first day of college. The professor of history walked in and he was in full costume, and she was bitten from that moment and would spend the next 30 years of her life realizing, I'm going to be Emily Dickinson. I'm going to be Georgia O'Keeffe, because in a way that no book could ever engage a circle of friends in an arena, this so accomplishes
cool.
that.
I love that. That's so cool. I may have gotten just bitten as well.
Oh, good. Are you writing that down, Peter?
Yeah, right. So when can we? So I'd love to know more about the upcoming events. What?
Alan, I'm going to send you some information today that I asked you to put in your printed and e-blast newsletters. So you can let the constituency of ACCA know about the event, which will be October 14th at the Classic Center Pavilion, and Art will go into more detail than the one we have coming up in April.
Yeah, we'll be sure to promote that.
Okay. Thanks for your help.
Yeah, of course.
Art, before you begin, may I ask the people in the Harris room, I wish we could turn the camera on your faces. I mean, I realize that's tough, but Kelly, and I don't know if you're in that space, is there anyone, hi there, is there anyone who has any thoughts or
someone could come up to the camera if they have a question or comment?
Sure.
Anybody in the room?
Did you, well, then we
thumbs up?
We expect to see all of you there.
We're working on getting our technology so we can get a different camera going.
Yeah, I think everyone in the room is just taking it all in, no questions or anything.
We love that. It's all about taking it in. Okay, Art, my apologies.
Okay, and one thing, Madeline, if it's possible, if you're still on the Athens Chautauqua webpage, there is you can click on upcoming events, and that's what I'm using to talk from, and it gives them an idea about going to the website and taking advantage of that. And I don't know whether I can actually share that because I'm not a host, but I'll go ahead and just okay.
Let me see if I can, honey.
Yeah, it's right, and it will be nice to be able to see that, while I'm mentioning it.
Okay, so you want me to go to events?
Yeah, I think that may do it.
Okay.
Well, that's close enough. That's one. There is a page where it has all three of them. There it is. We got it. We got it. So great. Well, thanks for everyone for attending this event, and thanks to the Council on Aging to be putting this on. One thing that was never mentioned was that for the most part, we try to have all of our events free and open to the public, and all ages are available in terms of going to these events, and it's suitable for the whole family. And now we do have one event that will be for fundraising event that has to do with a breakfast tea. But let's start with the very first one that's on the screen. I see it on the screen. Maybe you see it as well. It's so exciting that we actually have a performer that we got to see at the Florida Chautauqua who portrays all three of these characters at once. And that first one is you're moving back, is the three palaces at Yalta, Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt. And our presenter for that, Bruce Collier, who is, by the way, an editor of their local newspaper. So that's where all these people tend to come from, all different walks of life. And he took on these roles. I saw him do the Winston Churchill one, and I was in tears. He was so good, and so about his life and the war and the situation. It was wonderful. And let me go back, since it's not up on my screen. So that one will take place on October 14th at the pavilion part of the Classic Center, where they have ice skating. And I think, and it will be a live show, and it is free. And you just, as far as I understand it, you just show up. We have over 400 seats, and you don't have to get a ticket unless the Classic Center has decided they have to do it. But right now, I don't think there's even a process of actually a ticket. But we expect a full house, though. This is exactly the way they do the tent Chautauquas in Greenville, and we will be under a pavilion, sort of outside, but inside as well. And he'll present that live performance on the Yalta conference, and he portrays those individuals as they related to each other during that context. He doesn't talk it like in the past. He talks it, the gentleman, the reenactor talks as if he is currently experiencing these events. And then we'll have, following that on the next day, is the October 15th, we're going to do a special fundraising event where Winston Churchill reminisces about his personal and public life, the war, and the possible future. And you'll see him in that chair where he do the exact same thing. If you see the picture of him sitting in the chair with his big cigar. And that will be a fundraising event, and will be ticketed and has to be, registered and pay in advance through the website. And the next one after that for the fall will be a virtual event. We have done over 10 Zoom related events that have been partly historical reenactors, partly lectures on issues as broad as piracy to a live performance and on all kinds of issues. And we've done that in the past year because of COVID. So we kept this History Come Alive on virtual, and we will do another virtual on Robert F. Kennedy, American icon. And this will be a solo performance by Jeremy Meyer, who portrays a candidate on the campaign trail in '68 and features insights on the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Civil Rights Movement, and the impact the Kennedy name had on Robert's worldview. It is followed by an interactive question and answer session. And those are really an added part of this, that you get such a wonderful feedback and such great dialogue from the audience. So every one of these events we do will have that feature as well. And that'll be on November 6th. It will be in the evening, and it is free. And you can sign up and register as you did, like you did for this Zoom, virtually. And what's nice is that you can do it as a group like you are doing now. So it doesn't have to be on one-on-one. You can actually have a group join in as well if they have the capacity to do that, as you are doing right now. So these are the three upcoming, and Peter did mention the ones in the spring, and I'm not quite sure what the dates are in there of those, but that does include a performance of Eleanor Roosevelt and Jackie Kennedy. I'm not sure if they're already up on the website or not, and also we'll be doing our June summer events as well. And we're not quite sure what the performances will be, because they're making some changes in Greenville about that as well. We did at one time thought we'd do Rosa Parks and Ben Franklin. We're not sure if that's exactly the two we'll get this time, but that'll be at the Morton Theater and be downtown. And since we've had so great support from the Athens Downtown Authority, putting one at the Morton is a kind of event that places it in historical context, being that Morton Theater as a vaudeville for Black vaudevillians will be an appropriate place to have to use come June of 2022. So I think I've covered everything. Always, we've been updating our website. You can always learn about every event and the characters and the performers and what's coming up. So I thank you all for coming. And I also want to thank Madeline, who is so inspirational. That video produced by her, directed by her, and even the scripted. It was a profound and inspirational. Every time I view that video, it inspires us to do more, and hopefully you had the same way of feeling about being inspired to attend some of these events. So thank you.
Well, thank you for those words. I do need to just postscript all of this. Peter and Art had a pretty significant part in my script, which I confiscated from some prior work they did. But anyway, I expect, now that I can see all of your faces, I expect every one of you to be at the ice skating rink on the 14th of October for the Three Palaces. You will see what the world leaders were thinking as that crushing chapter in our history, World War II, was coming to an end. And, you know, the extraordinary wisdom and, you know, not only the lessons learned, but the spoils of victory and the vision for the future will all be in extraordinarily delivered words from Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill. So do come. It's our treat. It's the community's treat. So we'd love to see you there. Any other thoughts? We're delighted to have you come in, Naveen, even though I know it was halfway through.
Yes, it was. Thank you. I was technically challenged here to try and join you guys, but I made it. So I'm glad I did.
Well, we need to be conscientious about the lateness of the hour. So without further ado, thank you so much. The Athens Community Council on Aging is one of the great institutions in our community. The role that you play is enjoyed and appreciated and needed for all of our citizenry, and it touches every one of us. So thank you, Harris Room and members of ACCA. We look forward to your being on the lookout for Chautauqua 10 events into the future. So
Yeah,
take care.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye,
We
Kelly.
look forward to it. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
The door.